And the third time when I actually listen to music, I try to listen to it as a choreographer. Now, this is like the most interesting one, which is like trying to hit those beats that the audience cannot hear automatically. But if you hit those beats as a choreographer, they will know that there's a beat over there.
Dance and content creation is the career up for discussion on today's podcast. Our guest today is a dancer and choreographer based in Pune, India. His dance journey began about 20 years ago, just at the age of 4. What I really admire about him is his authenticity. I truly agree with him when he says that he's his own unique selling point. He has taught dance across the world. He's the co-founder and managing director of GARV Dance, and he has danced with the likes of Nicole Concessao Sonal Devraj, founders of Team Naach, Chinmay Khedekar, Akka the wardrobe engineer, and many more. It is my pleasure to introduce Rohit Jethwani, popularly known as Junior Jethu, on today's podcast and discuss with him the journey of his job. You are listening to The Career Show, a podcast that helps you find the right career and inspires you to follow your passion. My name is Trishant Kansrajani, and I'm a student seeking answers to career-based questions that we all have. I'm here to sit down with career specialists and talk to them about the lessons learned during the journey of their career.
Thank you, man. That's such a fantastic introduction. That really means a lot. I literally got goosebumps. I'm like, wow, this is amazing. So thanks for having me on the show, man. It really means a lot to me.
It is a pleasure to have you, Junior Jethu. And I wanted to start off by talking about your childhood. Making a sustainable living in the creative industry, this is via dance, singing, and vlogging, was not a common theme until a few years back. So was dance just your hobby and passion? Or were you all set on pursuing dance as your career since the age of just 4?
Okay, so I don't know if I would like think about my career at that point of time, but like I just continued dancing because it was something that I was very passionate about. I think like what got me grooming was just the idea of being in a studio space or a confined space with loud music. I think like my body would my body would automatically start moving. And I'm like, this gives me a sense of happiness and satisfaction that, maybe other activities do not give me as much of a satisfaction. So while I was a child, since the age of 4, my mom always wanted me to learn outside the classroom. So she's like, no, go do 10,000 things. So I had like some 8 classes that were lined up outside school. There was elocution, there was dance, there was like even paragliding, there was karate, there was basketball. I was part of the basketball team. So there was basketball practice, there was football at some point. I remember there was table tennis and like lawn tennis. So I think like mom just wanted us to try everything, whatever we were interested in. I think that was like the best decision mom made, because I think it like really made us explore things that we really enjoy and we don't. And I think one big thing that I stuck to was skating and dance. Like two big things I stuck to was skating and dance. Eventually, when I hit 10th grade, board exams come, and like in India, the trend is once you're in 10th grade and you're studying for boards, everything comes to a standstill. So it did come to a standstill, but I think like after my 10th grade, the only thing I continued was still dancing. I stopped at everything. So I realized that, this is something that I really enjoy doing. And I don't know, where this is going to go, but this is something I don't want to, like leave as a part of my life. I always want to keep this as a part of my life and just carry my, journey forward. But then I stumbled upon dance as a career when one of the first videos on Instagram went viral. I think the first or second video on Instagram went viral. I think like that convinced me that, okay, like this cannot just be a passion or hobby, but this is something I could potentially convert into a career. I think that's when like I decided 2019 April, I think I quit my job and I'm like, okay, my body can move now. I'll, pursue my education dream maybe 20 years from now when my body cannot move, but my body can move now. And I don't want to leave the world, having that sense of regret that I never gave dance as an option as a career. So I'm like, I'm going to go wing it. And yeah, it's been a year and it's going really well.
That's great. And I just think it's an Indian thing, right? When Indian moms just put you in different classes throughout. I was in skating, I was in dance, I was in cricket. I also joined football for a bit. I joined Shamak for dance, actually.
Really? In Bombay? That's something I don't know.
You know when Shamak gives you those photo frames? They're still up in my bedroom.
Yeah.
But you attended University of Southern California. Similar to me.
With you.
Fight on. Fight on, Trojans. But it is interesting to note that USC is one of the best dance schools in the US. So did you ever consider switching to dance as a major during your tenure at USC?
Yeah, and I did, and I dropped and I dropped the idea within the next minute, simply because when I was thinking about me as my as a career, like I said, like dance was never an option for me to pursue as a career. I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur as soon as I graduated, or maybe right after my first job. Um, so I always pursued the business route simply because the business school had didn't have a very rigorous curriculum, so that gave me a lot more time on my hands to do things outside of the classroom. And like as I said, I had huge challenges or like issues with the way the education system was structured, where I didn't feel I was learning enough in school. So I'm like, instead of me spending my time in school or in my classes, like, studying for grades and like, really getting the grades that don't mean much today, I'm rather going to spend that time going to networking events and running to organizations on campus that teaches me more on how to run a business and like teaching me more on leadership, something that like my leadership class in the business school could not really do as much. So I think that's what like allowed me the flexibility to do things that I really wanted to do. So yeah, dance was an option for like a minute, and then I'm like, no, business is what I'm going to do, because I think that's going to help me forward to do other things.
That's super interesting. I remain in the business school too. I don't think I could have ever attended the Kaufman School, let alone get a major over there.
I've been to a shamak program. Here's my application.
But interesting that I know you did not join the Kaufman School, but you did join the intercollegiate competitive Bollywood team at USC Zeher. Can you talk a little about USC Zeher, what it is, and how was your experience with them?
Yeah, definitely. So I think by far the biggest highlight of my college experience. So I think I would say like my top two highlights of my college experience, simply because it just taught me so much. So I'll tell you more about USC Zeher. So USC Zeher is a premier national award winning Bollywood dance team that's based at the University of Southern California. So there's a circuit called the Desi dance circuit. Desi is like a term that's used for like brown people or South Asian, people. So there's a circuit called the Desi dance circuit, and they run two national competitions called Bollywood America and Legends. So there are about, I think, 80 to 90 teams across the entire nation, all across, like, from East Coast, from West Coast, from down South, from the Midwest, from like everywhere. And we all apply, and like we get into competitions. Every team's goal is to go win nationals. So I think like that's what like the whole deal is. Like it's like most teams have a goal of winning nationals. So like it's a super competitive scene. Competition season runs from January to I think April, and then I think like it's a whole season where you can go to as many as regional competitions as possible. And based on a pointing system, the top 10 teams in the nation go to nationals, and then there's nationals. So whoever wins nationals is a very big deal. So because it was very competitive. And I think USC Zeher, when I joined, was the top 10 teams in the nation at that point of time. We've been to nationals like almost every year, except just one from the 6 years that we existed when I joined. But the reason why I loved it so much is because it taught me more than just dance. So like more than just dancing with a team, I think it taught me, my life's most valuable lesson, which is discipline. I think what I realized is like, if you really want to become a better dancer, you need to have discipline. I think that's a life lesson that that can be used anywhere in the world, or like in any industry that you really work with. So I think that was my biggest lesson that I learned. And beyond that, I also learned so many more things that I don't think I would have learned otherwise, which is leadership. I think I learned a lot about leadership because there were a lot of failures. There were a lot of mess ups. Because here, just imagine the situation. You're managing a team, or you're part of a team of 20 people, and these are all college students who don't understand responsibility, who don't understand, managing time, who don't understand coming on time, plus they're not paid, plus you're asking them to give 30 hours outside of school with like some people who have majors like pre-med and computer science, which is really rigorous. And plus they're not as mature, so basically that's a whole set of new problems and whole set of new emotions to deal with. So I in fact found it a lot harder to manage a team of college students than actually manage a team while I was at my first job. And I think like it really taught us like, how do you really run a team with all these factors that are there that don't usually occur when when you're running a team at like a full-time job in like the professional world, because they're a lot more mature, they're a lot more responsible already. They've gone through like the series of like growing up, and like those things you don't have to deal with. So I think like it really taught me all these things, and I don't think I would have ever learned that just at the business school, because there's really give you like the practical experience of like how people are versus just like, oh, this is how you manage someone or motivate someone. Yeah.
Do you think you guys are following the Indian Standard Time, and that's why you guys arrive late at the practices?
Let's just say inefficiency was a huge part of our schedule. Some we would say 9 to 12 practice, it would be 9 to 2. So I mean, I guess like I guess like once we become older, we kind of understand or realize how can we make our processes a little more efficient than like it is.
Well, I guess it was also your passion, right? So it made sense if a bunch of friends ended up
Yeah.
together and
Yeah.
enjoying while practicing. So I think that's completely normal. We'll touch on the leadership and failure aspect that you just spoke about. But right of college, you joined the South African-based education team called I Experience. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah. I experienced.
So how did you soon enough realize that dance was the career you wanted to pursue? What was that ticking point for you that was like, okay, I'm going to quit my job and
Yeah.
going to go find GARV Dance? And you can talk about GARV
Right.
Dance as well.
Right. So I think it was just a matter of timing. And I really believe timing is everything. Especially like in like almost everything that you do. There is a sense of timing that involves some part of like your decision making or success. So it was, I think, April 2019. I think that was 1 year into the job. I was in LA. So a little background about I Experience. They're a summer program, and their main clientele is students going to American universities, and they invite students from American universities to South Africa and Lisbon and Berlin, where their campuses are based, for a 2 month to 3 month educational program that's tied with an internship. So you develop real world skills, and then you got to apply your real world skills to an internship and add value to a company. So that's where the program becomes very attractive, because kind of you get the best of both worlds, where you're being trained by like experienced professionals, not just professors or researchers. And plus you're being tied with a company to add value directly and apply real world skills. So the program had a lot of traction. So I was sent to, because coming from an American university background, I was sent to LA to manage a marketing team of 30 people across the United States that would like essentially promote the program for us on 30 different campuses. So there was one campus rep on every campus, and that's what I was doing. So I pretty much spent from September 2018 to April 2019 in LA, and I was in LA managing a team across the United States. And I told them I want to continue being in LA and not manage this team from South Africa, because I can still stay connected to dancing. At this point of time, my best friend had founded GARV Dance, and she had just founded GARV Dance with the intention to go compete. So she also graduated from USC. She could no longer run USC Zeher. So she's like, screw it. I'm just going to make a new team in LA called GARV, and we'll do the same thing what USC does and go out and compete. So I'm like, cool, that's epic. I'll come and, help you. And like at that point of time, I was just an advisor on the team on GARV Dance. While I think like we progressed into 2019, things did not really go well between the company and me. We just had a few challenges. And I think like the few challenges were in terms of like some of the vision was changing. And I think like my personal goals were not always 100% aligned with like where the company wanted to see me going. So I think we faced a few challenges. And while I faced few challenges, I was a lot more heavily involved in GARV Dance. So now from just an advisor and dancer, I was pretty much like doing a lot more things on the leadership board, simply because I was just heavily invested, because it was also my passion. But at the same time, she was also my best friend. So I'm just going to help her out. And then while all this was happening, suddenly, like my job, like the co-founder of the company of I Experience, we hopped on a call, and he said that, if you cannot continue, throughout I Experience, then you have 30 days to quit. And then I'm just like, okay, you know what? I'm not going to wait till 30 days. Like I'm just going to send my resignation letter tomorrow. And like, because things are not working out, so it doesn't make sense for me. I'm not motivated to continue working for 30 more days. So I'm going to send my resignation tomorrow. I sent them an email. I left the company, and the day I left the company is the day I was the co-founder's GARV. So my best friend invited me to, join her as co-founder. And that's when we converted this collegiate competitive team, that was born out of USC Zeher, into an actual professional company where we were now teaching classes in LA, and we were producing high production music videos. So those were like the two big, activities that we really focused on. Yeah, man. And then like and then like things kicked off really well. We did well for a year, and yeah, man, like it was a great experience, like just running the team and building a team from complete scratch. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, GARV Dance was amazing. I think that's how we reconnected after USC. I think that's the reason I reached out to you, because you were doing so well at GARV Dance. But after a year, you decided to shut down GARV Dance and decided to move back to Pune, India. Why did you make that decision, and how did things turn out for you?
Well, like I think probably one of the hardest decisions that like I've made, simply because I was really attached to the mission. Our mission of GARV was to really spread authentic Bollywood dance styles across the United States and the world. What we saw was that the United States, or like people living in the United States, though they were Indian origin, their understanding of Bollywood was very different. So and like obviously they were like influenced by the Western culture as well. They were influenced by like the American culture as well. So like their Bollywood was fused heavily with other styles, like so it was Bolly fusion, Bolly funk, Bolly jazz, Bolly contempt, Bolly kathak, right? But we were like, well, there's no Bollywood, so like, we want to bring that authenticity to LA, and then eventually all of California, and then all of the United States, and maybe the entire world. So I think I was very attached to that mission, and we saw a lot of people, falling for our mission and like wanting to attend our classes simply because that's what we specialized in. We specialized in like bringing authentic culture, and I was really attached to it. So, but then there were like three big reasons why we decided to shut down the company, and me and my co-founder kind of go separate ways. So the only people working full time in the company were me and my co-founder, and everybody else was just on the team as a part-time member. So the one big thing was that we were kind of aligning our personal goals with GARV Dance's goals. And we saw that our personal goals as artists or dancers are very different. So we had very different goals. And when we were thinking like, how does this really tie, into GARV Dance? And we saw that there was a huge, gap between GARV Dance's mission and our mission. And we're like, okay, so it, maybe it doesn't make sense for us to invest all our time into the company, but focus on ourselves first. So I think that was the first reason. The second reason was, I think like being a creative company, which involves a bunch of artists together. It takes a lot of time for your art to be recognized to a level where you can be financially sustainable. So I found it extremely challenging to like be financially sustainable. Like our company was profitable, like we were profitable with our business activities, but we were profitable without paying us, like a hefty salary. We were getting only just we were just pulling out a minimum salary, and like that was not really enough for us to pay rent and like really put food on the table every single day of the week. So I think that was the second big challenge, and the third big challenge was my legal status. So I think like while being a tourist, I was trying to find a way to convert my tourist visa into an artist visa, and then I could hopefully get a green card, and then hopefully I could register a company officially, and etc. But I saw that process being very risky, and I saw that process taking a lot of time, and I'm just like, well, I don't know if I want to be in the United States for that much period of time and put that much risk, just trying to like make a company survive at this point of time. So I'm just like, well, it doesn't make sense for me. And it's really challenging for me to continue staying in LA. So I decided, so we all decided that, it's best that we part ways for these three reasons. And then now I moved back to India, and I'm trying to pursue the Bollywood route and then still continue teaching.
We all know how difficult it can get to get a visa in the United States. So I do not blame you.
It's really difficult. It's really challenging, especially with the Trump administration. Has become even more challenging for international students.
That's the reason I'm taking a gap semester, right? So without going into further details into my gap semester, something you've been mentioning is that leadership has been a big part for you. You led a team at Zeher, after which you led almost a team of 16 people at GARV Dance. How has that leadership experience been for you, and how has it developed over time from USC Zeher to GARV Dance?
Yeah, night and day difference. So I think leadership is something that you can only practice. It's not something that you can learn in the classroom, because you really have to. Because I think the more you experience, the more you know, or like the more you learn how to manage people better and make them happy. So like the way I see leadership is more like a service, where you're really serving your team members, and you're really finding a way to push them to reach their goals, or you're finding a way to keep them happy, while being at the company. And I think like my values or my understanding as leadership has really developed over time as I've gone through a series of failures. So more I've failed, or the more feedback I've received from my team members or from like people around me, that's what's really taught me the biggest lesson. So I'll throw some light upon it. While I was the captain of USC Zeher in my senior year in 2018, in 2017, 2018, there were two big things I learned. The first thing I learned was empathy, is really like learning how to empathize with a team member. So for example, like this is what happened. Um, oh god, okay, so this is what happened, right? So we had scheduled a meeting with one of the team members. She didn't have a position on the leadership board, but she was a very creative person. Her name is Devangshi, and she was making some props for us. So we had a meeting for like our prop design for the show. And I think a meeting was scheduled at 9 o'clock on campus, but then we had switched locations to my apartment right after practice that got over at 8 o'clock. And I didn't realize that I forgot that we had a meeting at 9, and I forgot to inform her that listen, the location has changed. So come to my apartment instead of going to campus. And like my apartment is like relatively like a maybe like a 10-minute drive from campus. And she reached there. It's 9 o'clock. Nobody showed up. She waited for like 10-15 minutes, hoping that we would be late. She called me at 9:15, and she's like, hey, where you guys? So I'm like, oh lol, we are at my apartment. Just come through here. And then she was really frustrated, like extremely frustrated. Like she's like, I have a midterm tomorrow. She's like, I'm not on the leadership board. She's like, this is not my job description or my responsibility, but I'm doing it because I love you guys and I really love like the vision of the team. Plus you don't respect my time, plus like you don't have any understanding for my emotions. And she's like, and then I'm like, oh damn, because like, and she's like, you lolled me on the phone. You're like, oh lol, you because okay, not even apologize or something. So I think like that's what I realized, how important empathizing with your team members is. It's just super important. It's just not like they're not at your fingertips 24/7. You have to respect their time, and you have to respect their emotions at every single point of time. So I think that's the first big lesson it taught me. The second big lesson I think that it taught me was how to keep your team members accountable and how to push them in a way to be extremely efficient in reaching all their goals. So ones that were motivated from inside, it was easy because they were doing their jobs and responsibilities like really well and very efficiently, and something that we didn't have to put too much effort in managing. But then there were some people who were not as motivated, for like whatever reason. It could be for like multiple reasons, were not as motivated, and they were not executing the roles and like to the 100% efficiency. And like I think that's the big thing it like really taught me, just like it's just like, do not blame your team members because if they're not performing well, it's probably your responsibility. If they're performing really well, it's also your responsibility and your win. So and then I think I realized that like, okay, to keep them accountable, there needs to be a little better system on how we can keep them accountable, and also they can reach their goals while staying motivated in the organization. So I think like that's the two big lessons that really taught me. And then when I moved to GARV Dance, as a leader, I think like we had so many, and I think like these are just like the 2 or 3 big lessons. But apart from this, we had so many like series of failures in terms of, managing a team and like really recruiting a team. And when we were able to build GARV Dance, I think that was the most recent, but I would like to say, or like, in fact, really be proud to say that this was like the best performance that, we displayed as leaders, because we recruited a solid team that was extremely aligned to our vision, was extremely motivated. We fixed the empathy problem. We fixed the accountability problem. We fixed the not blaming them problem. We fixed a lot of problems that, I made like while I was captain. And like till date, our team, like even though GARV Dance doesn't exist, we still chat every day. We still hop onto like Zoom calls, maybe like once or twice a month to play some games. So we're still very closely connected. And I think like that's what really makes me happy to see the team, like despite not being active, still believe in the idea or vision of GARV and like still are like, very closely connected with each other as a family.
So something that came in my head while you were talking about leadership is failure. Facing failure is part of being a leader. Also, I believe that failure is a common theme in the creative industry because success does not come easily. In fact, in my last episode, Simon Coxon, my guest, mentioned that failure is such a wrong word because it teaches you way more than success. Have you experienced failure during your journey? How did you face it, and what have you learned from it?
100%. Like throughout like college, throughout like throughout my first job, even right now as a freelancer, I think like as you go, there's so many mistakes you really make. So like I just believe in two things: either you win or you learn. And like I think like those are like like that's like the biggest motto I kind of really stand by. And it's okay if something does not go right. The point is like just get up and don't repeat it again. Learn from it and don't repeat it again. So you can make a new set of mistakes and then learn from them again, not repeat your same mistakes, right? Yeah, and I can throw some examples. For example, like I already throw some light upon on like how we failed as leaders while I was running USC Zeher. Even right now, as a freelancer, a huge part of my job is to really create content and to really create content for Instagram and YouTube. I think despite making 20 videos, even now we make mistakes. Even now we go like, oh my God, this is this is something that we didn't think of earlier, but it's okay. If we're not perfect. I think the more mistakes we make, I think the more we learn, and I think like it's easier for us to succeed eventually as we kind of go ahead. So like I really value failure. I think like success is a very lousy teacher. I think failure is your best teacher that you can ever have, and like only if you fail you actually kind of learn from it. Because if you succeed, if you think about it, you only know what you did well. You don't know what could have potentially gone wrong. So when maybe you go ahead and next time do it, you do not know the things that to keep in mind, or like or you do not know the roadblocks that might come ahead of you.
I learned the same dialogue: success is a lousy teacher. That is something I mentioned in my last podcast.
Really?
I mentioned that in my
like
last
common knowledge
podcast.
right now. Yeah.
But now we spoke about soft skills. We spoke about leadership. We spoke about failure. What I wanted to touch on now is creativity.
Yeah.
When I joined a dance class like a couple of years back, my choreographer played on some music and put me on the spot and like, go ahead, choreograph something and let's see what you do. And I was like, I cannot do this. This is so hard. So what inspires you to choreograph your routines in the way you do?
Right. Yeah. And I think like this is such an interesting question because the answer will be different with every choreographer. I mean, at the end of the day, we're in a creative process. It's not a logical approach to things. It's a creative space. Like everyone is is trying to portray art in their best possible manner. For me, I think one of the first few things I really keep in mind is character. So I think Bollywood is like I would say my forte out of all the dance styles, and that's the only dance style I teach or I'm confident enough to teach. And I think that Bollywood cannot really exist without a sense of character. I think that's what really makes Bollywood different from like other styles. So that I think that's the first thing I think about. What is really the character in this segment or in this theme on this song, or what is the emotion this character is really trying to convey to the audience. Even though it's an entertainer piece, it's okay. Like the character can be something very something very loud and sexy and flirty. It's still entertaining. But it still has a sense of character to it, and it still has a sense of emotion that you can convey to an audience through not just your face but also through your body language and expressions. So I think that's the first thing I keep in mind when I choreograph. Now from like a choreography standpoint of just like being a choreography critique, I try to look at different factors. So I think the next thing I would think about is the music. So first I think we all listen to the music at least 100 times because it's just so important to understand, what segments fits where, what's the vision for this half, what's the vision for the verse, what's the vision for the chorus, etc. So it really helps us divide the entire music piece that we're really choreographing to like super easily. And so the first time I listened to the music as as an audience member is like, which is what I just generally feel, what am I really like feeling from this, right? The second time I listen to the music is as a dancer. It's like when the music plays, how does my body move as a dancer? What's really happening to my body and like what comes to me naturally, right? So automatically, whatever my body moves to naturally, I try to hit those moments or I try to milk those moments, right? And the third time when I actually listen to the music, I try to listen to it as a choreographer. Now, this is like the most interesting one, which is like trying to hit those beats that the audience cannot hear automatically. But if you hit those beats as a choreographer, they will know that there's a beat over there. So I feel like that's like the 3-step process that I always try to think about when I choreograph it, from a critical point of view. And then I think and then there are like small kind of checkpoints I have in my head. Like once the piece is done, I'll record it, see how it all flows together. And then once it flows together, if it flows well, great. If it doesn't flow together, then I'll try to make some changes through it. And I think like that's how like the piece, it takes about 2 to 3 days, and like that's how like the full piece is choreographed.
I wish I'd received that advice earlier before I went to that class.
It's not an easy process. I think some people can do it on spot. Hats off to them. But I think like it is a challenging process to produce something of high quality.
I now wanted to talk to you about something that you said earlier in the podcast. You said a couple of your videos went viral. Going viral is becoming a thing with our generation, and it is happening way more easily these days. Do you think going viral is important in the creative industry? But more importantly, how should one capitalize when they do get this opportunity?
Right. So to answer your first part of the question, do I think going viral is important? So the way I see going viral is like your first big break. It's like Hrithik Roshan's Kahana Pyare. I think, I feel like that's the way I kind of really see it, right? Is like you're all like Ranveer Singh's Band Baja Barat, and I think like that's how I really seeing going viral as is like this is like the first time the audience has recognized you on a bigger scale. And I think that's when like you've been exposed to so many eyes within the shortest period of time. So going viral, which means like being reshared by like multiple people, being like hitting millions of views on like certain pages, or like on YouTube, or like on your Instagram, etc. And I feel like though those numbers are important, I think like the amount of impact that you're really trying to make is also huge. But I think like when you go viral, that's when the real work really starts. Going viral is like the easy part. The hard part is when you actually go viral, how do you sustain from there? Or how do you stay recognizable? Or more importantly, how do you stay relevant? And I think that's what like the biggest question that every artist has is like, how do you consistently keep on staying relevant at like every stage, or like in every month or every year that you are as an artist? So I think the biggest thing for that is consistency. It sounds very cliched, but I think that's like the number one reason on you staying relevant in the artist industry. Because I think like the way I see the online space is very similar to the physical space. So for example, there's like many times at USC I would skip a lot of classes, simply because I didn't believe in the education system, and I found more value, in doing things outside class. But and like oftentimes, I would not know anybody in class, so I would not have anybody, to cheat from in the final exam. But then there were some classes that I went for consistently, right? And like those classes that I went for consistently, people recognized me, and like I was a recognizable face because I just went every week. I added value to the class. I spoke up in class, and I think like the English class that we went together, I think that was one class I was very consistent in. And I feel like that's what that's what the online space is also all about. You can't just go viral and just be like, okay, you're super famous now, that's when the work ends. No. So when you go viral, you got to stay consistent so that you stay relevant, so that people keep on recognizing you as you keep on producing work and keep on adding value to their life, either while teaching them something or like while entertaining them at some point.
Yeah, you were relevant in the English class because attendance was mandatory.
Accurate, really accurate.
But something you mentioned was numbers during your answer. And I think measuring success is a common attribute to every job. For some, it's money. For some, it's the numbers. For some, it's the pure happiness they derive from what they're doing. What is your measure of success? And how do you think an artist or a new artist should measure their success?
Right. So I think like my measure of success is just simply by the impact I really create. That's really hard to quantify, because sometimes you don't know how many people you're reaching or like how much of an impact it's made on some people. But I know it's made an impact on people when people actually comment or when people send a direct message in my inbox. And like the messages are something like, I was really fat. I stopped dancing, but I saw your video and that has inspired me to start dancing again. And I'm just like, damn, this is the kind of impact that I want to create. I think like I started dancing, or like I think my biggest purpose in life is always to inspire people and make an impact people. And I saw that I could do that through dancing and through my performance. And I think that's what made it even more attractive for me to convert this into a full-time career, because now I was finding a way to make it financially sustainable. Plus, at the same time, I was finding a way to reach my purpose in life. And when I saw, direct messages like these, not just from like one or two people, but like from hundreds of people, and then like the stuff that people comment on YouTube, I think that really warms my heart, and that really makes me believe that okay, this was a successful video. So I think like for me, my success is really defined, per video by like the kind of impact is really created to people, or if you're trying to pass a message to someone, did we pass that message in the most politically correct way and like the most impactful way possible. To the second part of your question um, is like what artists should consider as success. I think it really depends, artist to artist. I don't think there's a right answer for it. I think like whatever brings them the biggest sense of happiness. If they define success by the number of students in their class, by the number of followers they have, by the number of views they get on a video, I think that's like I think that's each one for themselves. I usually don't think the follower count or the view number count or the number of comments is very sustainable, because at some point it might exhaust you, or at some point you might just focus on your numbers, but then you forget why you actually started creating, or why you actually started dancing, or why were you an artist in the first place. And I feel like if you lose your purpose and you just focus on the numbers, you might just lose yourself as an artist. So I feel like that's the first challenge I see why it could not be sustainable in the future. And the second reason I feel it could not be sustainable in the future is like, say for instance, you fall ill, you're not able to create content for a month. It's obviously going to affect your Instagram audience or your YouTube audience. Your views and follower count and everything will start dropping. Then what you do, is that going to still keep you motivated to go do what you want to do? So like say when like one video, like 10 videos hit 10 million views, you fall ill, and now each video is not crossing 50,000 views, is that going to keep you still consistent and motivated to still do what you do? Maybe, maybe not. A lot of people start dropping. A lot of people like, leave because they're like, oh shit, I cannot do what I did earlier. So I feel like, it might not always be sustainable to run after the numbers. But I think sticking to your purpose and finding happiness within your purpose is like really what people could find the most sustainable success in.
Run behind impact, not behind numbers, Rohit Jethwani.
More like everybody said this at some point. I think this comes from Three Idiots. Run behind excellence, not behind success, and the success will keep following. So I think like it's the same concept over there as well.
No, thanks. That's some great advice. So you're a dance choreographer, you're a content creator. What are other dance career opportunities available out there? Also, do you see some new opportunities coming up in the future that could become mass market?
Yes, I think there's so many opportunities, and there's so many ways you could shape your dance career. You could become a wedding choreographer. Indian families, as you know, spend a lot on weddings, right? And like a huge part of weddings, or the Sangeet event, which is like the musical event where the bride side and the groom side, they all, their families come out and dance together. So choreographing for those events is huge. Dancing at those events, or like performing as like entertaining artists at those events is huge. Doing corporate events is huge. So a lot of companies have award shows or have conferences, all across India, and they're always looking for some form of entertainment. So you could do corporate events if you really enjoy that space. You could become like a music video director, if you really like directing music videos, or you could become a music video choreographer. Say you do not enjoy performing at all, you do not enjoy being on screen, but you enjoy the process of like choreographing and making somebody else look like a superstar, So I think like that could be something huge. Like a huge example is Ganesh Acharya, or like a Remo D'Souza, or a Bosco Caesar, like very popular names in the Bollywood choreography industry. So I think there are like so many ways on like how you can shape your dance career. The idea really is to really pick those things that you enjoy the most. So if you don't enjoy something, don't do it. So I feel a lot of people try to teach because they see like the surface level benefits that a teacher really gets, which is like the sense of a little bit of fame and respect that you really get in the community. But you should not teach if you don't enjoy teaching, or if you don't have a very solid purpose of teaching. Do those things that you really enjoy doing, and I think like that's what will like really bring you the most happiness and success. And then to the second part of your question, which is, are there new opportunities that I see in like the dancing industry that might become mass market? Yes. So I think the like right now we live in the world of content and social media. So what's really happened is a lot of people or youngsters who really want to train are now wanting to train only to create a video for social media. And I think there's a very small market that's left, maybe like a 20-30% of people who genuinely want to train to become better dancers. So I think like that's why like the shift has changed, and I feel that is going to be the future. But now that affects how training happens. So say if you're a teacher or in an academy, you cannot just simply run your academy or like run your training program the way you ran it before. Now the trends have changed and adapted, so you got to change your training structure in such a way. Now people don't want to go through foundation. People don't enjoy just learning foundation, technique, and then get to choreography. People want to go to choreography straight, So I feel like, you got to find a way as teachers or as academy owners or studio owners to curate your programs or training programs in such a way where you can train your people through choreography, not just focus a lot on foundation and training as a dancer, but like dive into choreography and like make them apply those skills as well. So I feel like that's where like the training industry is going to go, simply because we've been impacted by the world of content right now. Yeah, that would be like the biggest thing I would see as a change in like the way we are trained as dancers today.
So opportunities and challenges go hand in hand. What challenges have you faced as a dancer? What challenges should these new artists that you just spoke about should be on the lookout for?
Right. So I think that like you will face a lot of challenges, and I'll give you an example of one big challenge that I faced in lockdown. I think the biggest challenge at some point as an artist or as a dancer that you might really face is self-doubt. At some point in your life or some point in your career, you will always think, are you good enough? Can you produce this level, like the level of quality that you once produced before? And I think like such questions do come up. So I think what happened with me during lockdown is like I faced a lot of self-doubt. I became inactive, and I found that usually inactivity leads to self-doubt a lot. So I saw myself being inactive. So I saw a drop in followers. I saw a drop in engagement. I saw a drop in people recognizing, Junior Jethu as an Instagram, dancer. And I saw a lot of my other friends or other dance, or my other dancer friends in the community creating epic content and killing it, making the most of the time when people are on their phones the most, and I saw them shoot from like 8,000 followers to 60,000 followers, or like from 20,000 followers to 50,000 followers, and like their growth was insane in a very short period of time. And like, while I was inspired by that, I was still inactive. So I started self-doubting. I'm like, am I, going to be able to create something as good? Am I good enough? Am I going to be able to reach as many people I could reach before? And I feel like that's something that you will consistently, you might not consistently face, but you will face at some point in your life as a career. And it's okay. That's a huge part of it. A few other challenges that, that I've faced, but have not been that drastic challenges is one would be like criticism. You have to accept the fact that you cannot make everyone happy, and you cannot like create an impact on everybody. There will be a certain percentage that will not like your work or not vibe with your work. And that's totally okay. You just have to accept and move on. I feel like that will that is something that will really build your emotional intelligence, of like you not reacting emotionally, but like, understanding it in a professional, mature way that, it's okay, like focus on like the people that you're making an impact on, and like, embrace the people and ignore the people that like, who are throwing out trash talking comments on you. So I feel like that would be like a challenge that like I would see coming for a lot of people. So that's something even I've faced of me being on the heavyweight side. Where some people will comment on the weight in a very funny way. I laugh it off, because that's my way to cope with it. Simply because I know, my same weakness is now my biggest strength, because I know this, me being an overweight dancer and dancing has made an impact on so many people, and has made so many overweight dancers, or like, people who are not happy with their body, believe that like you do not need to be in a good shape to dance. So I feel like my my biggest weakness now become my biggest strength. So like it doesn't bother me as much. But yeah, but I think it's just important to face criticism and then just move on. You got to move on. So I think those are like the two big challenges or roadblocks.
You mentioned you laugh it off, but I think that's one of the best qualities you have. To end this podcast, I would like to ask my traditional last question. And that
Yeah.
is, what is one advice you wish you had received when you were starting your career as a dancer?
Oh wow. Okay. um, okay. I think like the biggest advice I wish I received was do not plan too heavily. So I think like especially because you're in the dancing space or in the creative space, you might pursue your career or like you might shape your career in many different ways, but it's also highly dependent on opportunities. You know, like say tomorrow somebody sees a video of yours and says, I want to sign you in a movie or a next web series, would you do it? You know, and like if you're interested in that space, that's a much bigger opportunity than what you're doing right now because you can create the same impact to a much larger audience in a very short period of time. So I feel like when I kicked off, planning GARV Dance in like the career space, I started planning GARV Dance as a full-fledged entrepreneurship, company. Like we planned our 1 year vision, and we were very strict with it. Like really, really, really strict with it. Like we were so strict and tied down to this vision that we could not move out or we were not flexible to perform other activities. And amidst that, while I was still focusing on content and creating, and like building Junior Jethu as a brand, which I didn't know it was going to be a brand at some point. At that point, a lot of opportunities came to me as a dancer. So a script was sent to me for a dance-based movie that's actually going to be releasing very soon. And a reality show, Dance Plus, which is the biggest reality show, had approached me to come on the show. So those are like the two big opportunities that came, but I had to decline them. So I had to decline a movie, which I really want to do at some point. I had to decline like a reality show opportunity simply because I was in LA and I was committed to my team. And we had planned this 1 year vision of going to stage and competing. And these opportunities came like in September and October of 2018. And at that point of time, I'm just like, well, uh, well, I don't know. I can't, I want to take this opportunity, but I'm not going to leave my team. My commitment lies there. I'd rather say no to an opportunity now than have 20 people like think I'm the most selfish leader ever. And then so I chose not to do those opportunities and stuck with GARV Dance and like to our plight, those like our competition season just never happened. So I feel like the biggest advice that I wish I got earlier was do not plan so heavily that you're really tied down. Plan, but like be flexible with your plans because you never know what kind of opportunity you might get as a dancer that might just change your life like 180 degrees. I think that would be like the biggest advice I would really think about as an artist.
Well, all the young dancers out there, learn to adapt. I think that is one of the biggest advice you'll receive. And with that, I would like to thank Junior Jethu, Akka Rohit Jethwani, for being on today's podcast and helping us learn about dance. Thank you for sharing the journey of your job, Rohit.
No, thanks so much, man. It really means a lot that you could think about me and really invite me to the show. I'm super excited to see how this turns out, and hopefully, it might be a little bit valuable to some people listening to this.
Join me next week to discuss the journey of a professor. Until then, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also, follow us on Instagram and LinkedIn for some exciting content throughout the week.